If there is one medical habit I wish more women questioned after 70, it is this idea that every test your doctor offers is automatically protecting you. I know that may sound surprising coming from me, because I am not anti-doctor, and I am certainly not anti-prevention, quite the opposite. I believe in being proactive. I believe in paying attention. I believe in caring for your body with love and wisdom. But I also believe something else that becomes especially important as we get older. More testing is not always more care. Sometimes it is more fear. Sometimes it is more confusion. Sometimes it is more follow-up, more procedures, more medication, more side effects, and more anxiety for something that may never have harmed you in the first place. And women in this season of life need to hear that clearly, because many of us were raised to be good patients. We were taught not to question the expert, not to make trouble, not to ask too many questions. If a test is offered, we assume the responsible thing is to say yes. We think, well, they must know best. And often they do mean well. But medicine is not just about what can be done. It is also about what should be done for this person at this age, with this health history, at this stage of life. That is a very different question. I want to talk to you about 5 common medical tests or screening situations that deserve a second look after 70. Not because they are always wrong, not because they are never useful, but because context matters, symptoms matter, your overall health matters, your priorities matter. And I want you to feel informed enough to pause and ask, do I really need this? What happens if it finds something? And will this actually help me live better? That, to me, is wise healthcare. The first one is cardiac stress testing when the symptoms are vague and there are no clear warning signs. Now, if you are having chest pain with activity, if you are suddenly short of breath, if your energy has dropped in a major and noticeable way, if something feels genuinely concerning, please get evaluated. I do not want anyone dismissing real symptoms. But I have seen so many older adults sent for stress tests because they mentioned feeling a little tired on hills or not as energetic as they used to be. Sweetheart, being 74 is not the same as being 44. Of course the body changes. That does not mean we ignore symptoms, but it does mean we put them in context. The problem with stress tests in older adults is that sometimes they raise alarms that lead to more testing and even invasive procedures that may not improve how a person feels or how long they live. One unclear result becomes another appointment. Then maybe a catheterization. Then maybe a stent. Then maybe complications from contrast dye, bleeding, or a hospital stay that never needed to happen. And what was the original complaint? Often something broad like fatigue. But fatigue can come from so many things. Poor sleep, dehydration, low fitness, stress, grief, medication side effects, anemia, undereating, blood sugar swings, even just being run down. So before a vague complaint turns into a full cardiac cascade, I want you to remember this. You are allowed to ask, what are you looking for with this test? How likely is it to change treatment? Is there a simpler first step? That is not being difficult. That is being thoughtful. The second one is brain imaging for mild forgetfulness. This one touches such a tender place for many women because memory changes are frightening. You forget a word. You lose your keys. You walk into a room and forget why. You blank on a name you know perfectly well, and immediately your heart drops. You think, is this the beginning of something terrible? I understand that fear. When the mind feels less sharp, it can feel so personal. But mild forgetfulness does not always mean something serious is wrong, and it does not always mean the first answer is a brain scan. Sometimes what looks like memory decline is actually stress, poor sleep, anxiety, depression, hearing changes, medication effects, thyroid issues, B12 deficiency, dehydration, or simply the normal slowing and shifting that can come with age. And here is the hard part. Brain scans can show age-related changes that sound alarming on paper, but do not actually explain the symptom or require treatment. Then suddenly a woman who was mildly concerned becomes deeply afraid. She starts watching herself constantly. She loses confidence. She stops driving. She pulls back from life. Not because of what she can or cannot do, but because of what she thinks a scan means. That breaks my heart. Because the first step in mild cognitive concerns is often not a machine. It is a careful evaluation, a conversation, a cognitive screening, a medication review, a sleep review, looking at whether the person is functioning well in daily life. Are you handling money, following conversations, managing routines, keeping up with appointments? That fuller picture matters so much more than panic. If there are major neurological warning signs, of course the conversation changes. But for small memory lapses, the wisest first move is often slower and more human. The third one is routine colonoscopy after a certain age. Now, colon cancer screening can absolutely save lives earlier in adulthood, and I want to say that clearly. But after 70, and especially after 75, the conversation becomes more individualized. It is no longer just, is screening good? It becomes, is this screening still the best choice for this particular person? Because colonoscopy is not a small thing in older adults. The prep can be hard on the body. The dehydration can be harder. The sedation can be harder. The recovery can be harder. And the procedure itself, while often done safely, is not risk-free. Bleeding, tears, rhythm changes, complications from sedation, those things matter more as the years go on. And if a woman has already had normal prior screenings, no symptoms, no family history, and no new red flags, the balance may be very different than it was 20 years earlier. Sometimes a stool-based test at home may be a safer option. Sometimes the right answer is no more routine screening. Sometimes colonoscopy is still absolutely the right move, but this should never be autopilot. I think that is what I want women to hear today. Health after 70 is not about blindly following a checklist written for everyone. It is about asking whether this step still fits your body, your risks, and your life. The fourth one is whole body imaging or broad scans done just for reassurance. I understand why these sound tempting. We live in a culture that tells us early detection is everything. So a scan that promises to look everywhere can feel like peace of mind. Just check everything, people think, then I'll know. But bodies, especially older bodies, often contain harmless little findings. Tiny nodules, cysts, calcifications, scar tissue, age-related changes. Things that would never bother you if nobody went looking. But once they are seen, they become part of the story. More scans, more referrals, more biopsies, more waiting, more fear. And sometimes the very search for reassurance becomes the source of distress. I want you to imagine opening every drawer in a house that has been lived in for decades. Of course you are going to find odd little things. That does not mean the house is unsafe. It means it has been lived in. Our bodies are like that too. They hold stories, wear and tear, changes, adaptations, signs of living. So when someone offers a scan without a clear symptom or a focused medical question, pause. Ask, what problem are we trying to solve? What will we do if something incidental shows up? Is there evidence this helps someone like me? That question can protect you from a lot of unnecessary drama. And the fifth one is bone density testing, followed by fear-driven medication decisions without looking at the whole woman. Now, please hear me carefully here. Bone health matters deeply. Falls matter. Fractures matter. Strength matters. I care enormously about protecting women's bones as we age. But I have also seen women become terrified by a number on a scan when nobody took the time to explain the full picture. A scan is just one piece of information. What matters too is whether you have fallen, whether you have broken a bone, whether you are frail or strong, whether you are doing resistance training, whether your balance is steady, whether you are eating enough protein, whether you get calcium and vitamin D where appropriate, whether your medications increase fall risk, whether you are losing muscle, whether you feel sturdy in your daily life. Those things matter more than many women realize. I have seen women with a slightly concerning scan result put immediately on medication. And yes, sometimes medication is the right choice, but not always. Sometimes the first conversation should be about strength, mobility, balance, nutrition, and actual fracture risk. Sometimes the body needs support, not panic. That matters especially because so many women over 60 already feel betrayed by their bodies. They gain weight and are told to eat less. Their joints ache and they are told it is just age. Their sleep falls apart and nobody explains hormones. Their energy changes and they are made to feel lazy. The last thing they need is one more scary number with no compassionate explanation. I want you to remember that a lower score does not mean you are broken. It does not mean fragility is inevitable. It does not mean your future is already decided. Bones respond to how we live. Muscles protect bones. Balance protects bones. Confidence protects bones. Strength protects bones. That is why I care so much about functional health for women in this season of life. Can you get up from the floor? Can you carry groceries? Can you walk confidently? Can you catch yourself if you wobble? Can you build stronger legs and a steadier core? Those are not glamorous questions, but they are the kind that change lives. And when you step back and look at all 5 of these situations together, you begin to see the real lesson. The goal of healthcare after 70 is not to chase every possible abnormality. It is to protect quality of life. It is to help you stay mobile, independent, clear-minded, strong, calm, and connected to the life you are living now. That is what matters. Not endless testing for the sake of feeling responsible. Not turning every uncertainty into a procedure. Not assuming more medicine always means better medicine. Sometimes the wisest question in the room is, what happens next if this test is positive? And right behind it is, would that next step actually be good for me? I know this can feel uncomfortable if you were raised to defer automatically to authority. But asking questions is not disrespectful. It is part of being an engaged adult in your own care. You are allowed to ask for plain language. You are allowed to ask whether a test is routine or truly necessary. You are allowed to ask if there are alternatives. You are allowed to ask what the downside is. You are allowed to take time before agreeing to something non-urgent. You are allowed to say, I want to understand why this matters for me specifically. That is not fear. That is discernment. And I think women in this chapter of life need more of that, not less. Because prevention is not only screening. Prevention is also building a body and a life that are more resilient. It is walking. It is strength training. It is nourishing food. It is hydration. It is sleep. It is medication review. It is social connection. It is balance work. It is tending to blood pressure and blood sugar. It is caring for your hearing and your vision. It is reducing fall risk. It is paying attention to symptoms without becoming consumed by them. That is prevention too. Quiet prevention. Real prevention. The kind that supports you from the inside out. I am not asking you to reject medicine. I am asking you to use it wisely. I am asking you to remember that your body is not a checklist. Your life is not a lab report. And your worth as a patient is not measured by how many tests you agree to. Age is just the beginning, my love. You have spent your whole life caring for others. It is time to care for yourself. And part of that care is learning when to say yes, when to pause, and when to ask one more question before you hand your power away. Vibrant doesn't have an age limit. Neither does wisdom. So the next time a test is offered, take a breath. Get curious. Ask what it is for. Ask what happens next. Ask whether it truly fits your body, your symptoms, and your goals. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for your health is not rushing into more. It is choosing with care.